Hi everyone. In today's class, let me discuss The American Scholar by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Essay written by Ralph Waldo Emerson on American Scholar. In this, I would like to discuss three main concepts as put forth by Emerson. The first one with Undivided Man. The second is about scholar's man thinking. The third is about creative soul in man. And according to Emerson, there are three important forces which shapes American scholar. They are nature, books and action. Let me start with a quote from T.S. Eliot. He says, "When I had got at what proved to be my life work for education, I discovered in Emerson's poems and essays all the fundamental motives and principles of my own hourly struggle against educational routine and tradition." T.S. Eliot, he strongly feels that throughout his life he had been struggling to find against educational routine and tradition of America, but later, when he studied Emerson's poems and essays, he has discovered the fundamental motives and principles of his own hourly struggle. Such was the greatness of Emerson's writings. The American Scholar. It is a famous speech given by Ralph Waldo Emerson at Phi Beta Kappa Society at Cambridge in 1837. It was a great oration, his first great public address, and it has been considered by the historians the most celebrated talk in American academic history. Let me put forth before you the appreciations about this essay, American Scholar. Brubacher and Rudy, the American writers, opines. They call this American Scholar essay as the intellectual manifesto. This intellectual manifesto set the keynote for a new wave of academic reform. Emerson made a strong plea for adapting education to the individual culture rather than tamely submitting to prescribed curriculum derived from other lands and other times. It was the opinion of Brubacher and Rudy. Oliver Wendell Holmes, an American professor, says, "This grand oration was our intellectual declaration of independence." James Russell Lowell, American poet critic, calls it an event without former parallel on our literary annals. 60 years after independence, still the people of America, the American literature was still heavily influenced by Europe. Emerson, for possibly the first time in the country's history, provided a visionary philosophical framework for escaping from under its iron lids. And he wanted to build a new distinctly American cultural identity. What he says, instead of blindly imitating the European ideals, principles, education, let us have a new cultural identity of America. Because of this, he was considered the most eloquent spokesman of New England transcendentalism. The essay begins with the concept of undivided man and proceeds to define the scholar's man thinking. Emerson says, "There is one man. Man is thus metamorphosed into a thing, into many things. Man is not a farmer or a professor or an engineer, but he is all." In other words, if one is to look at all of society and the variations of types of people, one will find the whole man. Emerson points out that if individuals did not see the dignity of their occupation, they then would sink into a role that placed them into a subordinate or inferior position. By all this, what Emerson feels is scholars' man thinking should be focused on dignity of labor. Next, he talks about creative soul in man. He explores the creative soul in man as a scholar. The strong soul, he says, finds opportunities for expression in actual living, not blindly imitating others. The creative soul, the strong soul, finds opportunities for expression in actual living. Then the emphasis falls really on the man, not so much on the scholar. First, he says, man is greater than any of his functions, and he should therefore remember that he is first a man and then a scholar or a priest or any other. Thus he states, thinking is the function, living is the functionary. Yes, first we have to think, and it makes us a function, and living is the functionary. The way we live, it makes it as a functionary. Thus he strongly advocates that a scholar must be man thinking, not simply a thinker. Then Emerson acknowledges three forces that shape a man into a scholar. They are nature, the mind of the past, that is active participation in life. Then he says, nature influences the scholar and helps him to feel oneness of the human soul and soul of the nature. Thus arises the command, know thyself, which is identical with study nature. Mind of the past. Emerson characterized the mind of the past as represented by art, institutions, and particularly by books. He indicated that books are noble and indeed the best type of influence of the past. He had strong cautions in their misuse also. He says that one can know past by reading books, and books can represent only aspects of truths, and for this reason there is a danger in that some people may take what a book says to be an eternal truth. What he feels or opines is, one can take information from books and he has to judge it and has to develop his own conscience to take an action or decision. Books can only inspire a person and renew his creativity. Then he talks about reading. The scholar must read God directly, live life and feel life. Reading must be followed by periods of solitude, inquest and self-discovery. This is necessary because genius is always sufficiently the enemy of genius by over-influence. See, by reading books, it has lots of information and it is almost like a genius. But it should not be enemy of genius by over-influence. So one have to read it in solitude and he has to inquest and have a self-discovery about new things. Be innovative, be creative. Books have an important service during the intervals of darkness when we have to repair to the lamps which were kindled in the past, says Emerson. See, when there is a dark period, when people are in solitude, when people were in depression, when people have different types of circumstances, books serve as a lamps and it has to be kindled, and it happened in the past. The third one is action. The third source of the scholar's knowledge is the total act of living. That is, action is an assistant to scholar. Action is with the scholar subordinate, but it is essential. He calls action is an assistant to scholar. Without it, he is not a man. Without it, thought can never ripen into truth. Inaction is cowardice, but there can be no scholar without the heroic mind. So what he feels is, the scholar, he should have a heroic mind. He should be action oriented. The preamble of thought, the transition through which it passes from the unconscious to the conscious is action, says Emerson. He has beautifully quoted so many principles, so many statements in this essay, American Scholar. Finally, he also says the virtues of a scholar. The virtues of the scholar are self-trust, and his function is to cheer, to rise to men, to cheer, to rise to men by showing them facts amidst experiences. It means that one should have self-confidence, whatever may be the experiences. Scholar has to cheer, he has to laugh, he has to rouse into action. And by all that he means that one should have his own identity. Then finally he says, then only the scholar will become the world's eye and the world's heart. Emerson finally gives a clarion call, and he says that we have listened too long to the courtly muses of Europe. We will walk on our feet. We will work with our own hands. We will speak our own minds. This spirit will give rise to a nation of men where each one will be inspired by the divine soul. It all shows that Emerson's patriotism, his strong will to build America as a nation with its own cultural identity. Finally, this American scholar essay is considered a manifesto of literary rebirth and rejuvenation of American brilliance. And this essay is constructed on the lines of classical oration. It has exordium, argument, and oration. It emphasizes for change, progression, and virginality of a scholar. Thank you.